Breaking news, Mark Carney is finally headed back down to the US to meet with Trump and try and demand some tariff relief in a bunch of different sectors, but the mainstream media has already ramped up their propaganda and coverage and is ready for Donald Trump to say no. And that's because Canadians are already getting more frustrated as we just learned that the biggest risk to Canada's economy is not the 51st state talk, which we will get into today, but in fact, it is Canada itself and our bonehead politicians. We also got some brand new information comparing Canadian to US workers, and let me tell you, for the average employee, it is not looking good. But luckily, we do have a feel-good story at the end of this video. There's a lot to talk about today, so let's get into it.
Let's delve deeper. We have with us political analyst Laurie Turnbull tracking the story for us as well. Laurie, good morning. Great to see you. This is, of course, a major development. The Prime Minister announcing he'll be meeting with President Trump next week, Tuesday. Your thoughts? What's going through your mind?
Well, I kind of to pick up on what Jeremy...
It's crazy that it's a major development for the Prime Minister to meet with the President. Like, this should just be a regular occurrence where they get along, but instead, it's a major development because he's actively avoided this for quite a while.
He was saying, is there going to be something in his hands when he comes back? I'm not sure how many times the Prime Minister can go and sit in the Oval Office or anywhere else and have a conversation with the President and not have something concrete, whether it is some sort of sectoral relief, whether it is something that is more broad about the negotiations with CUSMA overall. But I mean, it's interesting that they're having this meeting, and I'm curious about what brought this about. You know, should we be hopeful? In some ways, we're kind of used to thinking, oh boy, like we're not seeing any progress here. Maybe there's a reason to be optimistic about this. We'll find out soon.
We haven't seen any progress on this because up until now, it was a stated goal to get away from the United States from the Canadian government. They actually stated that as that was their goal. So yeah, there hasn't been too much progress.
Let's talk about what's at stake, because there is so much to discuss here, Laurie. I mean, apart from the fact that, yes, there are tariffs, but there is so much more with this relationship that we have to discuss. You know, the president, for example, has been shifting focus and talking about this entire missile dome, a golden dome, and that's where the comment of 51st state came about just a few days ago. So talk to us about what's at stake here.
Well, I mean, I think we can see clearly on an economic level, this relationship between the U.S. and Canada has been extremely disrupted for months now. But yet, you know, as many have pointed out, we still have most of our trade coming under the CUSMA deal and so therefore not affected. And I think one thing...
Okay, I'm going to call that out every time they misrepresent it because a less generous way to call it would be she lies multiple times in this video. But... yes, CUSMA technically protects a bunch of things. If you are CUSMA compliant as a company, if you are not CUSMA compliant, which means, you know, small businesses, medium-sized businesses who didn't get the extra certification, which costs money, which costs resources, then you are still paying the tariffs if you are not under the CUSMA compliance.
We really have to be worried about is whether that's going to last or whether the upcoming review of CUSMA could find that actually
USMCA, CUSMA, same thing.
The president isn't interested in carrying this on, you know, in any real good faith. That's why his 51st state comments really stress me out, because I think everybody's been hoping perhaps he'd stop saying that once Prime Minister Trudeau maybe that was a Prime Minister Trudeau thing, and he doesn't say that with Prime Minister Carney, but no, apparently he does. And so it worries me that if he's saying that about the missile dome, will he also say, hey, look, you know, we don't have to do this CUSMA thing. You guys could be the 51st state, and then we can just trade for, you know, be no problem. We won't have these kinds of issues. And so wondering where his head is. And also just...
it's not that hard to wonder where his head is when you've spent a decade or even longer basically doing your best to try and erase any level of Canadian national identity. It's going to make it easier for other people to be like, hey, you have no identity. You're bringing in people from all over the world in mass amounts. Why don't you just join us?
Looking at what's going on in the U.S., I mean, the situation with James Comey, like, this is not a president that we have any reason to think is reasonable to deal with.
Oh, yeah, James Comey was definitely reasonable to deal with, and he acted in good faith, for sure.
Or respectful of institutions.
And let's talk about the Prime Minister's position and the politics back in our country. We've been seeing how the Conservatives, Pierre Poilievre, has been pushing the Prime Minister to get some sort of a deal. We know something was announced, or was supposed to be announced way back in July. It's been a few months now. We haven't seen that happen. How crucial will it be for the Prime Minister to come back from this visit and present something to Canadians that they have been able to achieve in this meeting?
Well, yes. I mean, I think the domestic situation for the prime minister is that there's a sense that he was hired in the election to deal with this very issue, that he was going to be the chief negotiator. He had a special power or a special set of experiences or skills in order to deal with this type of situation. But at the same time, I don't think anybody really thinks that he's some kind of Trump whisperer and he's going to be able to change necessarily what.
This is where Lori Turnbull turns into Lori Turnbull shit, because look at all of these articles which directly call him the Trump whisperer. That was his identity. Mark Carney has been dubbed the Trump whisperer. Can Carney be the Trump whisperer for a while? Here's another article talking about Carney will have no choice but to kill supply management. And what do they call him in the article? For a while, things were going well for Prime Minister Mark Carney, aka the Trump whisperer. Well, let's see what CNN has branded him here. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney on Iran, Ukraine, and being a Trump whisperer. Okay, Lori, nobody expected him to be the Trump whisperer, or you're lying to Canadians, you're backtracking because Trump has not agreed to anything that Trump has wanted, so you need to run cover for them, as the government mouthpiece media decides to do, because she also misrepresents another thing in a second.
The president does. And so I think the expectations of him are not just about dealing with Trump, it's also about dealing with the fallout, dealing with the economic realities if we aren't able to get a deal with Trump. At this point, it just doesn't seem like, I don't know if we've made any progress at all with this. I don't know if any of these talks, any of these missions that delegates have gone down, including Minister LeBlanc, to go and have these conversations, is there any reason for us to think that there's going to be a breakthrough moment now?
No, there's no reason to be hopeful because our ministers are idiots. Mark Carney is actively avoiding trying to get a reasonable deal done on purpose, and Trump himself is saying no because he knows how Canadians are behaving. Let's get to her next lie.
And I think it's going to get especially tricky for the prime minister because, by all accounts, he's going to deliver an austerity budget, which is going to, what's going to be there to make people feel like we're making progress on domestic.
An austerity budget. Oh, is this the same budget that Carney's borrowing binge will break the bank? This is the same budget that the budget officer is saying, hey guys, we're falling off a financial cliff. Like, this is why I do this. This is why I call out the mainstream media, because she is running cover for the politicians on national public funded media. And they run cover for Carney when he makes statements like this. Canada has what the world needs. Oh yeah, but you seem to be blocking all of the projects for what the world needs. As a new era of international trade and cooperation takes shape, Canada will thrive, aka we will not be working with the US. We are creating a new web of trade partnerships, once again, anti-US, to bring new investment, open up new markets, and deliver transformational opportunities for Canadian workers. And we know that the Liberals are crushing it when it comes to opportunities for Canadian workers, because we did just get this chart here from Kirk Lubimov, and this is what Canada's labor demand looks like. There's no labor demand in Canada. Not only has Canada been losing jobs, but the vacancies are also collapsing. So we can see in almost every sector, we are seeing labor demand is falling. And maybe that's how we end up with this chart. So everybody in Canada likes to think that we can take on the US and that Canadians have so much of a better life than Americans because Americans, they're just so dumb down there, right, Canadians? I'm mostly talking to the liberal boomers and anybody who's suffering from TDS in Canada, so the sarcasm's there pretty heavily. We have this chart. Employees in every Canadian province are poorer than employees in the poorest American state. So looking at this chart here, Alberta, which has the highest earning average salary in Canada, would be lower earning than the lowest possible state. We would be 51 out of, 51 states if Alberta is to join the US. When Canadians sit here on our high horse, and also the Canadians who somehow think 10 years of liberal management have been good for Canada, that Canada's thriving, the best economy in the G7, the lowest earning state is still higher than the highest earning Canadian province, and that's crazy, especially when we have, again, more polls coming out about anti-American sentiment like this.
New poll finds Canadian attitudes against the idea of becoming the 51st state have strengthened. The poll conducted by Ipsos for Global News found more than 70% of respondents feel that Trump's comments have strengthened Canadian pride.
No, they have not strengthened Canadian pride. What they have strengthened is anti-American sentiment. What they have strengthened is anti-Donald Trump sentiment, not Canadian pride, because if there was Canadian pride, we would see a lot more calls for less immigration, more of a Canadian national identity, actual investment in Canadian citizens, in Canadian projects, in becoming an energy superpower for real, not just listening to liberal talking points and being anti-American.
Close to 80% of Canadians would never vote to become part of the U.S.
Why would you? You'd be last place on the earnings list.
While only 16% would join the country if offered incentives like full citizenship, currency, and financial asset conversion.
That's crazy to me that only 16% would consider joining if there wasn't a dollar for dollar exchange. Like, it would make the average Canadian so much richer.
When we asked these questions a while ago, there was a certain number of Canadians who actually were contemplating what an offer from the United States would be, particularly if they thought that they could have their investments valued in American dollars and we would have all the rights of being an American citizen. There was a certain percentage of Canadians who thought that that would be something worth considering. We don't think that anymore.
Yeah, we don't think that anymore because Canada's got important stuff to focus on. More positive things like David Eby, one of our premiers, aka a governor of Canada, who's doing everything he can to shut down Canada's economy, and he's now being called a true threat to Canada's economy, not Donald Trump, which once again, I'm showing in these videos, blame the Canadian government. Stop hating Americans, please. We got this article here, which is again why I'm saying Canadians have not become more patriotic about Canada. Canadians have just got more anti-American because as many as 47,000 foreign students may now be in Canada illegally, according to the IRCC. They've way undershot that estimate like we saw in the other article I just showed the other day. They are not even basically counting. This is just a guess they've thrown up, but luckily, Aisha Zafar is going to really crack down on the people who have overstayed their visas. Obviously, this doesn't include any level of other illegal immigration or people who are overstaying other visas. This is just specific to students who came. But here we have another piece of hilarious liberal propaganda, which we will be calling out about Canada-U.S. relations and Canada really standing up here.
Our world is changing. We face new challenges that jeopardize North American prosperity and put Canada at risk. But we can give ourselves more than any nation can take away.
Oh, can we?
Canada's new One Canadian Economy Act gives us the tools to approve the projects that tie us together.
Oh, the One Nation Economy Act. Okay, well, again, here we have proof that the provinces will not work together. Even after approving this act that has already happened, we are not seeing an increase in domestic trade. No projects being approved, and our premiers, aka governors, can't seem to get along.
To put that tanker ban at threat, it's not just a threat to our pristine coast that so many British Columbians, including myself, value, but it is a direct economic threat to the kind of economy that we're trying to build in the country here. And so when I've said, let's cross that bridge when we come to it, we'll see what the Premier comes up with, I'm being polite. I am being polite. There is no project. There is no bridge to cross unless the Albertan government and the federal Canadian government are committing billions of taxpayer dollars to build this project.
So I actually wanted to call him out for a multitude of reasons because I think that is one of the best examples of Canadian political behavior. When I said we'll cross that bridge when we get there, I'm being polite. Then just say no, you loser. Don't lie to your constituents. Don't lie to Canadians and say, we'll think about approving that project when you obviously, from the get-go, have no intention of doing that. And that is the soft, passive-aggressive attitude we get from all of these politicians in Canada, and it's why you can't trust anything they say ever.
Make us a conventional and renewable energy superpower.
Oh, yeah.
Enable new defense infrastructure and strengthen our economy, letting us build at a pace not seen since the Second World War.
We're going to keep putting out that propaganda, even though we have this clip here, which is an exclusive broadcast interview with Enbridge CEO. Keep in mind, Enbridge is sending billions down to the United States. Greg Ebel, who says Canada is standing in its own way of becoming an energy superpower. So we just saw in the other clip, we're going to make Canada a conventional energy superpower. But here we have one of the CEOs who's in charge of these projects saying, yeah, no chance, because capital will go to where the conditions are set. And today the conditions are not set for that pipeline to exist, because we know that the government is doing this on purpose. They are shutting down the Canadian projects, and they don't want us to work with the Americans, even though the Americans should be, and in my personal opinion, still are, Canada's best friend, because we share almost all of the culture when you include sports, media, our economy, everything. So yeah, why don't we try and work with the Americans? But like I said, we got a feel-good story here, so let's check out Chunk.
The winner this year is 32 Chunk, who has lived up to his name. He really exemplifies how resilient and adaptable these bears are. He left for a couple weeks, came back, and he had a broken jaw. That's a big injury. He adapted, and he ended up season fatter than ever. We show a skinny picture from the beginning of the season compared with a fat picture at the end of the season.
There you have it, 32 Chunk, looking thick, looking fat and sassy. Congratulations to Chunk for winning Fat Bear of the Week competition. And once again, this is from the U.S. National Park Service, and this is on CBC News, The National, aka Canada's national news, because it's obvious that Canada and the U.S. are connected way more than just the economy. There is a history of us being partners and best friends, and I think that needs to continue. But if you made it this far in the video, you absolutely rock. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're trying to get these videos out in front of more people. We are trying to grow the channel. If you want to support the channel, you can do it through the link down below. You can also do it through YouTube directly. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.